Welcome back to Connect. I am your host, Andy Hale. I have got a special guest today, Janet Shamlian, national correspondent for CBS News, previously national correspondent for NBC News, has covered stories around the world, recipient of numerous Emmy Awards, a Peabody Award. I could go on and on and on. It would take up my whole slot if I just went through Janet's accolades. Mother of five, now lives in Houston. Janet, welcome to Connect.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be with you. You forgot the most important biographical mention.
I know, I was saving it. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, I'll let you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The news. You're perhaps my oldest friend, and I don't mean oldest in age. I mean the person that I've known the longest outside my family. Right?
Yeah, I mean, so we both went to Edison Elementary School in Park Ridge, Illinois. And even for people that are familiar with Park Ridge, this school is long gone. One hallway, literally K through 6, one kindergarten class, one first grade class, one second grade class. So we were basically in elementary school together every year. That little tiny, I look at it as like a little tiny, like country schoolhouse is the way I look at it. You know?
I have really great memories from
and
there.
To think about, if you'd have said to us, even growing up, you know, elementary school, junior high, high school, you know, hey, you know what, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, you guys are going to be doing a podcast together. You would have said, first of all, what is a podcast and how the heck are we going to be doing a podcast together? So it's amazing to see you and talk to you. I'm so proud of the success you've had over the years. It's been incredible to follow you around the world. This podcast, you know, is more of my spiritual journey. You know, I've got a true crime podcast that's separate.
I know you do. You're a big deal.
Yeah. This, but with this one, I like to talk about, I call it spiritual, I call it kind of life lessons, but I want to talk about a couple things today. The first is what I call the power of a personal connection. I try to tell this to my kids. I try to tell it to any and everybody I know. I think there's a real magic in making an authentic personal connection with another person. And I think it leads to so many opportunities in your life. And I thought about you, and when I thought about bringing you on Connect is, I think you're a perfect example of that. And you might not even realize it, but like a lot of what you cover, you're making connections with people. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I have several examples to talk to you about. But let me preface it with this. I wish I had learned that lesson sooner than I had. And you say you talk to your kids about it, you try to preach that to them. I'm not sure it's something you can really obtain without just having lived, right? Because we were both wise in our 20s, weren't we? But did you know that then, or did you realize the power of it then? I didn't.
You know what? This is. I talk about this. I'm going to talk about this more. I might have a whole episode. I feel like right now, in a weird way, at 62 years old, I feel like I'm
not supposed to say how old we are, Andy.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll edit that part out. I feel like I feel like I'm in my prime. Like, I don't think I've ever been, I say this totally honestly, I don't think, as I sit here right now, I've ever been as excited about all the things going on in my life, all the things I want to do. I feel like I've got the exuberance of like a 20-year-old. And I kind of think what I wish I would have had.
Some of that.
What's that?
Can I have what you're having?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that comes from, I don't know, just like really connecting with your inner self and what you really want to do. You know, I think we spend a lot of our lives doing things that seem like the right thing to do, the right job. You know, I'm supposed to get a job, you know, that's kind of traditional. Oh, I can't take time off work to travel the world because I don't know, I just don't think they'll give me the time off, whatever it might be. And I feel like now, what I've kind of learned is life is too short, okay? Right. And you got to do your thing. Whatever your thing is, you got to do it. And so that's the vibe I have now. I mean, I can't tell you how contagious it is.
It's really liberating, right?
Yeah.
Um, but again, I'm not sure that that will translate to your children, who I assume are like my children and in their 20s, right? Perhaps your kids are in their 20s.
Well, my daughter graduated law school a year ago, now works for me. So she's, I want her to stay where she's at. So I don't want her to travel the world right now. She's amazing. So and then my son is out in LA. He was a film major in college. He did a 2-year grad program in screenwriting at UCLA. It applies to him because I was like, buddy, you can't wait for people's permission to
Mhm.
do what you want to do. You write something, shop it around. No, just let's start doing it now. So he and I are working on a short film together. We're going to create it. He's going to write it, direct it, put it out there.
I
Like
mean,
you don't
really
need somebody's
lucky
permission.
to have two of your children, to have that interaction with them, right? And the fact that your daughter, by the way, I have a lawyer daughter as well. And that's great that she is working with you and for you.
Amazing.
None of mine are connected remotely to what I do or to what my husband does. But I like your comment about not waiting. And I think that the point I was trying to make though is I'm just not sure you can teach that to somebody in their 20s. So maybe you and I have this conversation, right? That you've just got to get out there and do it, and the power of connection. I have a really good story about how I ended up at the network.
Yeah, I
And
want I want to hear it. I was hoping you had something like that.
so, I don't know if you remember, like in high school, I was way about journalism, right? Worked for the paper. I was at WMTH. Do you even remember what that was?
WMPH, yeah, I used to announce football games, and I never forget. I came in at halftime, and the janitor says, remember a guy named Rick Urbach? He and I
Yep.
did.
Yep.
Janitor says to Rick, "Hey, do you got a girl announcing the game with you today?" Because my voice was so high, I was like a freshman. I was like, "Oh my God, this isn't going well." Anyway,
Maybe
go
this is
ahead.
not for me. Anyway, so I go to journalism school and I work in these stations, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then Houston. My ultimate goal is to get back to Chicago, right? The big time. So go to Chicago for a couple of years, and then we decide to start a family. And I have no family really in Chicago anymore. So my husband has a large family here. I moved back to Houston, and I had 5 children in 7 years, which that's a
Unbelievable.
full-time job. And then
Do a whole other
after,
podcast on how you pulled that off, but go ahead.
well, and then, after my fifth child was born, I was watching the news and I was correcting the grammar, and my husband was like, I was watching NBC Nightly News, and it was still Tom Brokaw in his last days at NBC. And he's just like, this is not out of your system. And I know you've always dreamed about working at the network, and I'm like, I've been on a television for 7 years. So he's like, I think you should make a run at network news. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So I'm just going to skip through this and bring it back to the power of connection, because in Chicago, I'd worked with a guy and become very good friends with, Lester Holt at WBBM TV, right?
Mhm.
Lester was the anchor in Chicago for a long time before he went to the network. So I just kind of called him out of the blue and was like, look, I'm thinking about getting it back in. Like, what do you think? And the fact that we had stayed in touch and that we had forged that personal connection. Look, I had to do it on my own.
Yep.
But at this point, the first call I made, Andy, was to my former agent. He wouldn't even return my calls.
Hmm.
I've been on television 7 years, and he had become kind of a big deal in the television news agency game. He wouldn't return my calls, but Lester
Wow.
provided me an introduction to somebody at NBC. And then I went up there on my own dime and took a writing test. And, the rest of the story is I got a network TV job after having been out of television 7 years, which is an eternity. But it really started with that connection with
Yeah,
Lester.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. So, you actually had already built a personal connection with Lester Holt to the point where you felt comfortable calling him. So you had already forged that personal connection. That's part one. That's the most important part.
Right.
Part two was you took the step to call him, and you made it happen by reaching out to him and starting the process, starting the conversation. I think you got to talk about it. And I think it's so true. Like, I think I can give a lot of examples in life where like you have a, I mean, look, you and I are doing it right now. I mean, we've been friends since we were little kids, but yet we had a connection sufficient enough that I felt, I'm going to reach out to Janet and just see if she wants to get in this podcast. And I think in life sometimes we go through it and we don't just pause and make a little deeper connection with somebody. And I don't want to make it sound like it's all transactional. I mean, you can just enrich your life by having better personal connections. But the but is you're going to find that you're going to create a lot of amazing opportunities by making those personal connections. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd have a story like. And we
You know
need,
what? I have one more story. Are you
yeah, do it.
share it? So I don't even know if you're going to remember this, but um surprise, like I feel like the fact that I'm married to my husband is a direct result of my friendship with you. Do you remember this story when I moved to Houston and I was in
Um,
touch with you and you said to me, I don't remember the exact parameters of the conversation, but I was like, I took this job in Houston. I don't know anyone in the entire state of Texas. And you told me that you had been friends or dated somebody in law school who had also just moved to Houston. I'm not going to use any last names. Her name was Mary. And I think she was a friend of yours at law school in Illinois. And she had taken a clerkship, and you're like, this is her name. You should get in touch with her.
yeah, I do now. This is coming back to me.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
did reach out to her, and
Wow.
mid-20s, and I think you'd just gotten out of law school, obviously, too, and she had as well, and it was 25 or 26, and just got in touch with her, and she was at that time hanging out with a group of young attorneys. Nobody was married. Everybody did things together after work, went to the bars, got dinner. I didn't know a person. So, I mean, she invited me and I started hanging out with that group. And
Wow.
one of the people in that group is my husband,
That's
Lee.
amazing. That's amazing. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. Um, I love
So
that story. And I think what kind of concerns me about the younger generation, I think my daughter Hannah's a good example. When I was a young lawyer, there was no remote work. Everybody went into a vibrant office. You would pop into somebody's office either to ask a question or somebody would pop into your office to give you an assignment, oftentimes spontaneous conversation. My fondest memories are commiserating with, other young lawyers like myself, bitching about people you work with, going out for drinks, going out for lunch, like, and you're bonding. And she doesn't know. She has never even worked in that environment. Like, I don't think these younger kids know it doesn't even exist to them. Like, they've never even seen it. They're probably never going to see it. Because most firms have, a blend of remote and in office. And there's great things about remote. I like, but I really try to encourage people more often to get in the office because there's just nothing like it.
there's nothing like it. You're right. And I'm not sure a lot of them want to go. They become so
They
comfortable
don't.
throwing on a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt. And, there is something to be said for uninterrupted, put your head down and get the work done.
Exactly. No, that's what I like about it. If I've got to write a brief or do some research, I've got actually a remote office in Park Ridge. I got a great little office downtown Park Ridge. I love it. That's where I can go and work, no interruptions, do my thing. But getting downtown, I mean, it's incredible. Just the energy I feel when I do it. And I'll give you an example. I had a whole podcast episode about this. I actually have an agent, that I use for all my different like film and
Mhm.
media projects. And I just met him, over the phone. Somebody had like basically introduced him to me. And I said, you know what, let me come out there to New York and meet you. We were going to just do this all over the phone and like, sign a contract. And I can't tell you how much better it was he took me to his little favorite Italian restaurant, block from his house. We sat there for 2, 3 hours and I learned more about him and he learned more about me in that time than I could have done in any number of phone calls,
So smart to go. I mean, it's because it's easier to stay here and just doing it. You're
I've
so
just been trying to encourage people to make those connections, because your Lester Holt story is a perfect example. You had made that connection, and it's important to make connections along the way, whatever you're doing professionally or personally. Um, this kind of dovetails with my second point, which is, and it's similar, which is you have the ability to create your own opportunities. I'm not one of those persons who believe like when you're born, there's a little dossier next to you, and then you open it up and it says, okay, well, here's your life, start to finish. This is what you're going to do. No, 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 no. Like you're going to create those opportunities. And I think you're a perfect example of that, how you went from, and I know in news, was your first station Grand Rapids?
It was. Mhm.
So you start small, even though Grand Rapids, frankly, that's a pretty good start for
It
start
was
one.
actually a decent start, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you start kind of climbing the ladder and you're connecting with people. Tell me what you think about like how you've created the opportunities in your life that allowed you to get to where you are, and kind of covering some of the biggest stories in the world.
So a couple of
That's
thoughts on that. And I have to say that you have to have a good partner, and I'm sure you agree with this, right? Because Lee really said, I don't want you to be 60 and say woulda, coulda, shoulda. Your dream was to work at the network, Janet. And you worked in local news. It was really cool. You had some great opportunities. But so I think that's extremely important to be with somebody who's going to push you and encourage you for what you want. But then I started freelancing for NBC. They didn't hire me straight out. First of all, create your own opportunities. Lester gave me the introduction, but they were like, yeah, maybe. And so they told, said, if you're ever in New York, they weren't going to pay my way to come interview me. I was
right.
not on their list of somebody. So I paid my own way, dusted off the business suit, hoped it didn't look too dated. Purposely forgot my resume because I didn't
Oh,
want to,
nice.
to have it be so obvious that there was this long lapse in my career. And then what happened is that they issued a writing test in New York. And when they said we're going to give you a writing test, then
I didn't think that would be, I mean, I get it, but that kind of surprises me. Did you expect that?
no, but I knew I could ace it. I mean, I'm a writer. And when you
Mhm.
talk about creating your own opportunities, so I knew that they give you like a bunch of Associated Press facts, 3 pages, and they're like, write a 1-minute script for television. You've
Ah,
got 15 minutes to do
yeah.
it. But how I've created those opportunities in the years since that break, if you will, is that, most people by my age now are pretty much out of television news, right? It's sort of a young person's business, let's face it, unless you're based in Washington, D.C., and you're a specialist at the Pentagon or the White House or State Department.
Mhm.
General assignment correspondence, which is what I am. I go to the Uvalde, school shooting and the tornado and the snowstorm this week. Those are generally younger people. But I think what appeals to CBS is that I'm a very strong writer. I turn things quickly, and we're starting to come to an age in television news when the correspondents don't write anymore, which
It's a shame. Yeah.
it's a shame. There's a producer sitting in New York who will write your script if you're not a strong writer. So the fact that I still write and try to give it 100% every day has given me longevity that as a general assignment correspondent is pretty unparalleled.
And so what's your next chapter, if there is one? So right now you're working still on stories. Do
I
you
signed a
have,
new contract with CBS last year. And I love the work still. I still love the work. But to your point about time, and I'm noting that you're not in Park Ridge right now. It looks like you're enjoying yourself at some second home.
I got to get out of Chicago in January, man. I need the sunshine. I'm like a solar human being. It's like I just wilt if it's not sunny out.
I'm impressed and jealous at the same time. So congratulations on that. But I do want to travel more. And I think at some point I will probably go into some form of consulting because on LinkedIn and other forums, people will call me and just say like, hey, can you come talk to our CFO or our CEO? They've got to do a TV interview. And
Oh, okay.
and
Consulting on that.
and I'm like, I can't contractually, I work for CBS News and I'm proud to and happy to do that. But if it, at some point, I think that I've had enough interest that I might move into something like that. At CBS, I've tried to like branch out and doing more feature stories. We have a couple programs on the weekend that are more feature oriented. And look, I don't want to keep running to school shootings. It's like
No.
being a first responder. It's hard on your heart. And I've done my share. So yeah, at
I'm
CBS,
gonna give you, it's funny. I think, if my kids are here, they'd be like shaking their head, like, oh my God, Dad's gonna like start giving people advice. Like I'm always telling people like, so like for you, example, I don't know what you want to do, whatever it is, go for it. My message to you is my mantra for 2025 is create, create, create. Everybody is an artist. Everybody is a storyteller in some way. So for you, I mean, I don't know what you want to do, but I could see you. There's so many possibilities you have. You could start, nowadays, you can just create your content, put it out there, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, you got your own website. You could be an independent, janetshamlian.com, covering stories you want to cover. Doesn't have to be a big, national news story. It might be something more heartwarming. I remember the one you did about the Christmas, like the farm with the amazing lights on the trees.
Mhm.
It could be anything. You could be a consultant. You could start your own program interviewing people. The Janet Shamlian show on YouTube. It's now got 1 million followers, and you're interviewing all these amazing people you've met over the years. Like, it's all out there. You can do all this right now. And I just think a lot of people,
I need you as my life coach.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but it's seriously like, you could do all those things. There's so much out there. I'm just trying to encourage people to do it. Do you know who Gary Vee is? The entrepreneur, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's
No.
written several books. He wrote a book called Crush It. Anyway, I love his message. One of his big, and he's huge on social media. One of his one of his TikToks I love. He's like, get out there and do it. You're gonna die. Like, what are you waiting for? And I like this whole idea of not waiting for somebody's permission. Let's say you had an idea for a show.
Mhm.
Hey, I want to do like the Janet Shamlian weekend show. You're pitching it to um, CBS. They're not into it, whatever. Man, you don't need somebody's permission. Your contract, you could just do this on your contract's up. You start this show on your own. You start doing it. You get amazing guests on there. I'm sure your Rolodex is insane. And if you do that, just make sure you have me on there as one of your first guests. Okay.
I want to know what that means for you in 2025. So
Yeah, so
create,
for me,
what
I'll
is
tell you
Andy
exactly
doing
what it
this?
means. I want to, so when I say how the road, you never know where the road's going to take you. I was just doing regular kind of litigation attorney, commercial litigation, which basically means business A suing business B. Okay. Uh, Nothing really to get super excited about. And then, do you have 10 more minutes and I can tell the story?
Oh, I love this. This is so
Okay.
great to connect
So
with.
this is an example how it kind of dovetails into you make your own opportunities in personal connections. So I was working at a big firm in Chicago for 4 years. They opened an LA branch. I love warm weather. I raised my hand, volunteered to go out there. Just got married to Brenda, dragged her out there, worked at the big firm in LA for 4 years. And then once we had kids, the deal was we moved back to Chicago, which we did when Hannah was born. So I come back to Chicago and I get a job at a boutique litigation firm. And I meet a woman, she's my age, and we become very good friends. We just were colleagues, work colleagues. She winds up leaving at some point to become the corporation counsel for the city of Chicago, meaning like the top lawyer
Mhm.
for the city of Chicago. And we stayed in touch. And then, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, she calls me up and says, hey, do you have any interest in representing 12 Chicago police officers who are getting sued in federal court? I'm like, oh, never done that kind of work before, but okay. It was more like civil rights
Mhm.
work. So I had this huge case. that the city of Chicago hired me to do, and I won this trial. Nobody thought I would win. It was like front page of the Chicago Tribune, all the news stories, blah, blah, blah. That led me now to doing a lot more of what I call those like true crime cases, because those cases are, there's been a crime, something's happened. And through that, I got into doing civil rights on the plaintiff's side as well. And through that, I got into true crime documentary movies and storytelling. So like A Murder in the Park, White Boy about Rick Wershey. I'm working on one now about another client, Cleve Heidelberg. I want to tell true crime stories of either people that I know that I exonerated or helped exonerate, or just true crime stories that I have heard about.
But that's your passion, isn't it?
That's my passion. And then I want to also, I want to do that. I want to continue to kind of do the Connect podcast and kind of be more of just do more speaking and talking about what I'll call more like motivational topics, inspirational topics, kind of like spiritual life coach to sort of speak. And I want to get much more active on social media. Okay. This is the thing today. There is no barrier to entry. When you and I grew up, you pretty much, had to like try to go knock on a door at a brick and mortar place to get a job.
That's right.
And you can just put your content out there now, whether you are a musician or an artist or a writer or a filmmaker, whatever or a news correspondent, you could blow up. I mean, and I just put it out there. Put it out there, man. Like share your content with the world. And so those are all the things I want to do in 2025. I got a long list, I'm telling you.
And you're so lucky that you're working on this project with your son. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Admiration for that. My husband's a recreational pilot, and my oldest son is also a recreational pilot, and they have that kind of shared connection. They're working on something, and I think at this age that I love your laundry list of things you want to do, but the fact that you've got a connection with both of your kids on something, I mean, to me, that's the payoff, right? Now you get to see them as adults and enjoy, and that's really special.
I wish I would have kind of known at a little young. I told my son, I said, man, you are light years ahead of me. When I was in my mid-20s, I would have been very shy talking to adults. I would have been not really networking with people. Wouldn't have been like, I would have been just kind of, I don't know, just not really as comfortable, putting myself out there. But I just think now, and especially I go back to social media, I think a lot of people look at social media, especially TikTok. Okay. I have a TikTok. All right. TikTok is not just 12-year-old girls doing dance videos. Let me tell you, TikTok can be an 80-year-old woman telling you the best way to carve a pumpkin or to make the microwave corn on the cob.
Like carve a pumpkin, Yeah. It's the new Googles in some respects.
And so what I try to encourage people, whatever your thing is, and it could be a side thing for now. Let's say you like, you really love to bake. Like one of the women I know that helps me with a lot of my social media, I had her on the podcast, Donna Alexander. She wants to baking is her passion. All right. So, she's got these videos out there where she's showing, the things she's baking, showing her recipes, showing the final product. Social media is free. It's free. And you can put it out there. And I put this all under the umbrella of we're all creators. I don't care. Everybody is a creator or a storyteller. And so you can put your content out there for free. And you're going to start connecting with people. People are going to be like, you're going to start connecting with people little by little. And so, I don't know. I hope I don't sound too, daddish here and too preachy about this, but I feel this so strongly.
I think it's a good message. I mean, in terms of your kids, you're right. Your son's way ahead of you on this. He already knows this, but I love your message to people who are a little bit older, right? In their 40s, their 50s. Like you can start now. There's
Absolutely.
no. Are you a baker? Do you love motorcycles and you go to motorcycle shows or
You
repair them?
love knitting?
Yes, let's
I
see it.
mean, there's an audience for all of that.
Yeah.
You have your own. Think about this. You could have somebody 75 be like, um, Janet's book club. If you had a once a week YouTube thing or TikTok thing saying, hey, you know what? This week I'm reviewing XYZ book. I really recommend it. Here's why. I guarantee this is probably already out there right now. There's probably 1,000 of these. Um, like a 75-year-old woman who's recommending a book every week, and people love her insight. They love what she says. I even joke about maybe my next profession is you can go to lunch with me, and it's like I charge like some exorbitant rate for lunch, like, okay, it's like $5,000 to go to lunch with me. But then you can ask me whatever you want. You ask me whatever questions you want. I'll give you ideas for businesses and things, like fire away, because everything can be done. I mean, any age, I don't care what your interest is, you're an organic beekeeper, great.
You just have to get out of your own way.
Yeah, and you can't, and the other thing is, I think the most important thing is you can't care what people think.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you about that. Do you have a minute?
Yeah.
So
Let me just finish the thought and I'll let you go. I mean, because even with me, there's a hesitation like, how many likes am I going to get? Are people going to like it? Are they going to care? You know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. When I started Connect,
Mhm.
I thought, God, are people going to be like, have you seen Andy Hale now? It's kind of weird. Like, he's talking about this spiritual journey. Like, I don't know, man. It's not the Andy Hale that I knew in Park Ridge. Janet, I don't care, man. This is who I am today. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I just, I gave the commencement speech at the University of Missouri a couple of years ago. That's my alma mater. And that, I think the students were looking for some divine inner, advice on how to like work your way up. But I really talked about you cannot let other people's opinions of you impact yours. And I can't tell you the number, I couldn't get out of there because the number of parents who
Mm.
came up to tell me like, yes, and I didn't learn this lesson until I was X age, right? So I'm just not sure, Andy, that we can teach that to 20 somethings or teenagers, right? Maybe, but
I
I
think you
honestly
can. I
don't
think
live.
you can. I actually think kids at a younger age should be exposed to these kinds of concepts and ideas. Like, you know, uh, I don't know. I think it's such a powerful, it's hard. I can still remember, I'll tell you a story. This is crazy. This is crazy that I remember this. Okay. Um, that's how much this impacted me. We were at Edison School. I was probably it wasn't sixth grade because this was, this kid was older than me. Remember this guy? I think his name was Gary Heeler, maybe. I don't know. He was kind of a burnout kid, a year older, and he made fun of my shoes that I was wearing. Um, and I was so mortified, and it upset me so much, and I was so I don't know what you want to call it. Like, I still can vividly remember that encounter. Um, and I wish I would have just had the ability to laugh it off and be like, I don't care what he thinks of my shoes.
But fifth grader can. They
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I know, maybe not. But I think that if you can learn, I think one of the biggest lessons in life, successful people, in my opinion, are authentic people. Okay. Whatever your job profession is, I don't care if you're an electrician, you're a pizza maker, you're a news correspondent, you're a filmmaker, you're a lawyer, you're authentic. People feel that, people understand that, it resonates with people. And so I think even for kids now, I think it's gotten better. Kids that are, maybe kids that are gay, are now more comfortable, being themselves, coming out. I mean, I'm sure we went to school with kids that were gay in high school. We didn't know it.
Right.
And I think, younger people are generally getting more confident in being who they
I
are.
hope you're right. I hope you're right.
I think it's still hard, but I think it's important to be your true self, because it's your true self and your true path and purpose that you're meant for is where you're meant to be. and so.
And that authenticity that you talk about is what people connect to, right? They know when they're dealing with a fraud. We all do, right? It's
Mhm.
it's
I
it's
also think I've seen some of your stories, and um, I saw the one about uh there was one about the lights on the tree, which was kind of heartwarming. There was another one about a bakery. They were
oh,
what were they making? Like it was
which
a bakery. I don't know. It
was it
was
recent?
it was they're picking up these before, like it was a holiday bake. I don't know, it was a cake or
Oh,
whatever.
was it the pie story in
Pie
Houston?
story. It was the pie story.
It
Yeah.
was a flying saucer pie
Yes.
right
Yes.
before
Yes.
Thanksgiving in Houston. Yeah, a
Yes.
couple months
Yes.
ago.
Yes. I think it's very noticeable when you can do a news story and you're connecting with the person.
Mhm.
You're connecting with the pie owner. Why are your pies so successful? Why do people wait in line blocks or overnight for these pies? Like, I think, it's very easy to tell when somebody is kind of just going through the motions
Mhm.
and they're not into it, and they're making the story more about themselves, and you're
Oh my
not listening
God.
about the
Yep.
person. We're not really like, you're like, why didn't you even ask them X, Y, or Z? And so be yourself and be
Yeah.
authentic. But I think, to your credit, and I don't just mean this, I'm not just saying this because I've noticed this though, you're a good listener, and you listen and you make a connection with somebody. I think that's also a super underrated skill, is listening, especially in your business. It's like, I hate it when, like, it's a 3-minute segment and you spoke for 2.5 minutes. And I didn't
Yes.
even hear the person speak more than like 2 sentences, because you are asking leading questions and they're just saying yes. So people line up overnight for your pies, huh? Yeah. And your pies are, you got 20 flavors, right? Yeah. Why would I ask it that way?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, and the fact that you've noticed. And I am very curious about people. I love hearing their stories, and frankly, those stories sound dumb. The Christmas tree out in the middle of nowhere and the flying saucer pie story, but those are,
They're the
you said,
best.
spiritual journey, the podcast, like that. For me, I have to do so much stuff I don't want to do, that the stories are just awful, right? They hurt and they're painful, and they're things in our society that I see the worst of humanity. So when I get to do those feature stories about the tree and the pie store, like, I love it. I do get to connect with people. Like, I spent the day in a pie store eating pie.
Yeah,
What's not
right.
to like? I'm getting paid, you
Yeah.
know.
So to wrap it up, just two more things I want to ask you. So what kind of I've been kind of sharing some of my little nuggets of wisdom or advice. What would be one of your little lessons that you would tell your kids or my kids, or about making connections or whatever? Like, what kind of a little advice would you give to somebody, a younger person,
Well, about making connections. I just
or
feel like,
anything? Yeah, it could be anything.
well, I want to just go back to, you can't let other people, that's what I've been telling my kids since they were young. You can't let other people's impressions of you impact how you feel about yourself. And I think for a long time I did. And TV is a very judgmental business, right? People
Yeah.
see on TV, oh, her hair's bad, oh, she's heavy, oh, she's this, oh, there's a grammatical error. Like, I'm guilty of it too. Um, and I'm not sure that again is something you can tell somebody, give advice for, without having lived through some of that. I'm going to fight you on the fact that you can learn it. I think it's a maturity thing. So, um,
I think that's true to some extent. You got to live life, but man, I don't think you got to wait, 20,
no,
30
no,
years.
no. I also tell people that, or tell my kids, like, when you connect with someone or in a relationship, you don't need to get something out of it, right? You just meet an interesting person. Like,
That's
it's
right. That's
you have to be
right.
interested or more interested in them than they are in you.
Yes. Yes.
Especially order, what I
I
do in
I just
general.
want to encourage everybody to, you know, first of all, everybody's got something they are into, something they're passionate about. Everybody has it. It can be as simple as, I like reading books, I like reading magazines, I like, 50s muscle cars. I don't care what it is, man. You can, if there was, there's an expert right now, and I'm sure there's a zillion of these sites, I'm sure there's a zillion TikTokers talking about, 1950 Camaros. But I just want to encourage people at any age to do it. Do it, do it, do it. Create, create, create. And I think for you, I'm going to make a prediction. I don't know what it is, but I see another chapter out there for you down the road coming. I mean, you've got all the skill to do it. You're the most talented to do it. You've got the network of people that you can, I mean, first of all, you could have amazing podcast. You could have an incredible podcast, just to have guests on talking about life. You could have, I mean, think of all the Lester Holtz in the world, It doesn't have to just be news people. Just talking about, it just be like Sundays with Janet. And every morning, every Sunday, it's George Bush, it's Lester Holt, it's the woman who owns the Flying Saucer Pie Company, it's the whoever. Interesting people, and you're having interesting conversations. I'd watch that instead of watching
Sundays with Janet. I mean, that might be my new thing. Yes, I definitely intend on having another chapter. And
yeah,
thank you.
So we're gonna have you back on here. I think later in 2025, we'll compare notes. But I think you've got so many exciting possibilities to tell stories, to tell the stories that you want in a longer format. You can choose who you want. I think that would be amazing.
Can I tell you how glad I am that we're connected still?
Yes, right?
All these decades. I've been a fan of yours as well, and everything you've accomplished. And I just, I couldn't be happier to do this with you today.
Well, I'm so glad. And I'll say this, that you know what a true friend is, when you can get on a call like this, you and and I feel like we were just talking yesterday. You can just pick up where you left off.
It's been decades, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that to me is really a true friend. It's you just go back to it's easy, you actually have an authentic connection. But the last thing, I just want to say it one last time. I mean, and I don't mean to be, I feel so strongly that you've got such a potential to tell these stories in the Janet Shamlian way. I mean, you could even frankly pitch this to a network. It could be a network.
Can I come back and seek your guidance when I'm ready to go on this?
Yeah, yeah. And I just think it'd be incredible, because I think the best stories are the authentic ones. And that's why I liked the Flying Saucer Pie Company. I liked the lights around the tree and the out on the ranch. Especially in today, there's just so much negativity, and the country's so divided. We're looking for feel-good stories. We want to feel good. And I think, and when I talk about being a storyteller, I want to kind of do this too. I mean, I want to just tell stories that I think are interesting, so I could talk for hours and hours and hours. So I think that's good for this episode. I so appreciate you spending some time with me today, and definitely to be continued.
It's been my pleasure. So we don't always have to do it on a podcast. Give me a ring sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.